Hello everyone, and welcome to another slightly late episode of Music of the Week. Since I'm not going to waste too much of your time, since I don't think I should, I'm just going to get through the six albums I've got to cover. So let's get to the six albums I've got to cover. We begin with Chelsea Wolfe and her newest album, She Reaches Out to She Reaches Out to She. This is her sixth album or something, and from what I know she's an experimental music artist, and the last thing I listened to her on was the crossover album she did with Converge titled Blood Moon Part 1. I hope they do a Part 2 because that album was quite good. I'm giving this one a B+, which is what I gave that album, weirdly enough. This is Chelsea doing a more sort of like gothic tinge electronic project, and it's really well handled. Like, from an instrumentation standpoint, it's fantastic. From production, it's really good too. And I like the main lyrical theme of her sort of like celebrating her sobriety, because, you know, looking into Wikipedia, she got into drinking at a very early age. But a lot of this album themes deal with the beating of that addiction as well as many other addictions, and I fucking applaud her for it. It's really good. Her performance as well is great. I think she only does vocals, and there's like a bunch of session musicians to do things like, I think, synth work and guitar work and bass and drums and so on and so forth. I think my only problem with it might be that some of the songs might feel a little bit too long, but there's not really a whole lot of faults. I think another one might be the fact that it's just not a style I'm overly familiar with, and I was expecting more of a metal outing because I think it's just because I'm so used to the previous Converge album, which I haven't gone back over even though I should. But all in all, just a really solid album. Chelsea's central performance, again, great. Production's really good. Writing's got a good theme. Beats are solid enough. Pacing's solid enough. It's not super exceptional, but it's just a really good electronic leaning album with some nice gothic and atmospheric elements. So if you want to check it out for that, it's well worth it, in my opinion. Next, we have a debut, a British/French alternative rock band named Cloudy Heads, and their first album, Back to Equilibrium. So I was not expecting what I got out of this. I wasn't expecting it to be alt rock because I saw it as an advert recommendation from Instagram, and I found that they dropped a new album, and I thought I'd go check it out. And I'm quite glad I did. I'm also giving this one a B+. I do think it's slightly not slightly less good than Chelsea Wolfe's album, even though I'm giving it the same grade. I did enjoy this though. I felt like the band had some really good charm to them. They know how to really construct a song. A lot of the songs are, again, a fair bit long, but they know how to cram in a lot of personality into them. The guitar work is amazing. Like, the band have that down pat. They've got a lot of charisma and charm to them, which I think helps. I think the production can feel a bit undercooked in some areas. But it doesn't really hurt the pacing. I also don't think the lyricism is too bad either. There's sort of familiar themes, but they are tackled in a mostly good enough way, I guess. Which feels a bit backhanded to say. It is ultimately a really good album. Again, the performances are great. I like the interpretation. It's probably my favorite thing about the album. The pacing is really nicely handled. It's got a lot of unique ideas. I just think that they need a better label so that they can execute the ideas better. But for a debut and for a very unique alternative rocky sort of vibe, I can recommend this one. I was not expecting to like it as much as I do, but it's a solid recommend. So I recommend you go check it out. Next, we have Infected Rain and their newest album, Time. So, this is a band who I've actually covered before. I covered their last album titled Ecdysis, or Ecdysis. I have no clue if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I'm giving this one, I like that last one, I'm giving this one a higher grade, and the highest grade of the episode, which is an A-. I liked a lot of the elements of it. I thought, like, it had a lot of really good bones to it, you know? It's the band sort of like metalcore leaning, sort of groovy, nu metal stuff, which is really good. Guitar work is fantastic. The production is nicely layered too. I do think the pacing's quite good. I like the lyrical themes covering topics like mostly like freedom and self-empowerment. Really good positive stuff, even if the lyrics do feel a bit too basic in some areas, but that's not a necessarily terrible thing. The performances are really good too. I like that there's a slight bit of a Korn flair to this, and a slight bit of an in this moment flair, but it doesn't really feel like they're ripping anyone off, which I much appreciate. I just wish that they could have used those elements a bit better, because it can feel a bit like it blows a bit too much in some areas. And it also ends a bit weirdly as well, because the second to last song on the album is titled Power, I think. And it's almost 6 minutes long, and it's the 11th song on a 12-song album, and it's really good and should have been the closer. And I like the fact that it includes lyrics in Moldovan, which is something that band haven't really tried before, because despite being from there, they usually write in English. But I like that they actually write in their native tongue, and I always champion bands who are from foreign countries who do that. The trouble is that the last song is a 2 minute 48-second long instrumental thing, and it really shouldn't have been because it felt like that should have been the opener. Even though there is an opener as well, that should have been like in the middle of the album. It's a bit weird how it's constructed and put together, but it's still a really fucking good bit of groove metal. Next we have Kevin Gates with The Ceremony. This is my first album by this particular rapping artist, and I'm giving it the tied lowest grade of the episode, which is a flat C. So this has way too fucking many songs on it. And I think my problem is that when you get through the initial hurdle of songs, when he's not just bragging about how tough he is and how much... there's like a lot of sexual lyrical content on the album. Most of it's about eating ass, and it's done in a bit too much detail, and I'm like, I don't need that in my life. But when he's taking himself seriously, which is like rare on the album, it can be really good. He's actually a captivating storyteller in some places. I don't think his rapping is too bad, but I think the production is really bad. And it's a rap album. It's got like 38 odd producers. It could be more, could be fewer. It's got a lot of people working on it, and so many of them have auto-tuned Kevin Gates' voice, not to the egregious level of one of the previous bands I covered. I can't remember the fucking name where the auto-tune was all over the place, but it's pretty noticeable on Kevin, and it just don't fit him. Again, the lyrics are a little bit basic, production's not too great. I think the pacing is... It did need a bit of work, because there's like a lot of really short songs. There's like 17 songs on the album. It's like 45-ish minutes, maybe longer. It's such a weirdly paced out album, but when it does take itself seriously, especially like near the middle bit, I'd say, or the last third, that's when some of these slightly better aspects of the thing come along. The beats are a bit forgettable as well, I will admit, but I think the production can be the biggest blessing and curse. It's an album that I think wants to go to all these more interesting places, but it's not allowing itself to. And I'm not really sure whose fault that is. It's not a terrible album by any means, but it really needed a lot of work, in my opinion. Next, we have the album that a lot of people have been talking about, because it just dropped recently. The Last Dinner Party with their debut album, Prelude to Ecstasy. These are a Baroque rock-leaning indie pop orchestral band, which is an interesting mix of genres. I'm only giving this a B+, though, and I'll tell you why. I really do like this album. I like what it's trying to achieve. I like the themes of love and lust from many different aspects. I like the queer layer added with the lyrical themes. Those are really good. I think the instrumentation is quite interesting. I like the production is nicely layered, especially on the vocals. And I genuinely think the band's performances are quite charming. They do bring a lot of charm and personality, and they come off as quite talented. The pacing isn't terrible either, but might be my biggest sort of like gripe, because the meatier aspects of the songwriting don't come until halfway through the album, in my opinion. If it's The Last Dinner Party, right? The first half of the album feels way too much like they're setting the table, and you really only get to dig in the meal to about the halfway point. And it's also... I know a lot of other critics have said this, but I've said it as well in my Discord review. It feels way too carefully curated. Like, it feels a bit like forced inclusivity, and I think part of that is the fact that it's signed to a major label like Island Records, and it's just not the right label for an album like this. This is definitely something that could be benefited from being more on an independent label, or just from a label that the band would make. And I think that's the route they should take. They need to ditch Island as soon as possible, because I think that label will try and drain them of their creative freedom, because it doesn't really feel like until the second half of the album where they're allowed to express it fully. And it's a weird feeling album in that case, but it's not really the band's fault. Again, they write well, they're about very pertinent subjects which are important to talk about. Really good sound mixing, really good style mixing too. Good themes, good instrumentation, and really good, well, mostly really good pacing, but it's the label that sort of looms over this one. It feels a bit like executive meddling to me, and it doesn't need to be there. So on the off chance that The Last Dinner Party are watching this, and I highly fucking doubt that they are, please ditch Ireland as soon as possible. Go to a smaller label or just make your own. Make the music it feels like you want to make, because it felt like Ireland was sort of forcing itself upon you in this case. And finally, we have Spectral Voice with their newest album, Spragmos, which I won't lie, sounds like a Greek macaroni dish. Even though they're not from Greece, I don't think they are. This is a deathy, doomy metal album, and also gets the other C, the C, like the pirates, like, because that's a horrible joke. Now, I am blaming the band Yob for my dislike of this album, because Yob, when I covered them for backtracking, a lot of their earlier stuff was like albums with like 3-4 songs, and they padded those out to like 10-15 minutes each. And this album does the same. It's only got 4 songs and stretches it over to well over 45 fucking minutes. And it really didn't have to at all. Especially for an album that could have been more interesting than it is. I do think the instrumentation is quite good. The drumming and guitar especially are nice. And I do think the band's performances are really good. They come off as really authentic in what they can do. The problem is that the lyrics are a little bit basic and a weird bit nonsensical. I think if they're an actual concept here, because the atmosphere on this thing is fucking amazing. A lot of reviews I've read, and I haven't read many, but the ones I have read have said that it's like waking up in a nightmare, and I agree. This is a very horror-fueled album, and it should have leaned into those elements, but the lyrics do not point to any storytelling, and it feels like such a big missed opportunity. Also, the production is way too condensed on this thing. It feels a bit constrictive around things, and it doesn't really feel like things are allowed to breathe. I like the raw feel, but it's a bit too raw. It didn't really need to be polished, it just needed to make up its mind about where it wanted to go. And the structuring... Now, I can excuse albums like this when they do a good job, or at least something interesting with the concept that they're going for, which this album doesn't really do. A lot of the songs just feel quite repetitive, and they don't feel like they lead to anything. Especially considering that the shortest song of this album is like 7.5 minutes, right? That's the fucking level we're dealing with here. All the other songs are like 10 minutes or longer. And it's just weirdly handled with the pacing, and I just don't like it very much, personally. But it's, you know, it's not a bland album, by any means. It does have some really good aspects, and again, the atmosphere is crucial to the album. They just did not know how to work around it at all, and I don't really know whose fault that is, but it's something that they should have spent a bit more time on, because there was an interesting story to be told, and it baffles me that they didn't try and tell it. That'll about do it, though. I'll do the official album ranking, I guess you could call it. So let's go with... Ooh, it's difficult for the bottom spot. I'm going to go Spectral Voice with Spragmos, and then Kevin Gates with Ceremony. Cloudy Heads with Back to Equilibrium. The Last Dinner Party with Prelude to Ecstasy. Chelsea Wolf with She Reached Out, She Reached Out, She. And at the top, Infected Rain with Time. As always, though, go and listen to all these yourselves. Formulate your own opinions, because that's what makes the shit interesting. Yeah, I absolutely said that. Favourite song of the last week? Might go, and it's a bit of a tricky one, might go to either Para by Infected Rain or Nothing Matters by Last Dinner Party. I'm more likely to go back over Infected Rain's album, I think, so I'm gonna give it to that. Favourite album cover, though, simply for simplicity, I really like Back to Equilibrium by Cloudy Heads. I just think it's a really nicely shot thing, and I like the, I like the photo model emphasising the album's theme. I think it's a really nicely shot album cover. That'll about do it for this. Next thing I'll see you for will be tomorrow, which will be the return show. By the way, if you haven't seen Cutting Edge yet, go watch it. Really fucking good pay-per-view. Might be my favourite of the season, although we've been on a fucking hot streak this season. I'm quite happy about that. So I'll see you all tomorrow night for the return show. That's going to be pretty good. I've set the card up. I just need a response from my co-booker, Bobby. And then next thing you'll see me for, hopefully, if I can get one done tomorrow, might be a reaction, although I don't really know. I might have to push that back until next week. I know it's been delayed a bunch because we've been moving shit around, but, yeah. I mean, Saturday at the latest. Saturday at the earliest, but it might be, again, next week. And it's still going to be that new Ghost Inside song. So that's the plan. That's the idea. So I'll see you all tomorrow night. I can promise tomorrow night for the stream. But that'll about do it. And as always, thank you for watching. You're awesome. Bye bye.